Can we get started? Who's in charge? All right, I guess I'm in charge. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. A little bit more room here now than there was this morning, but it was a great session this morning. And I think we have a great session now, a nice mix of views. The Czech foreign minister, Ivana Klimpuš-Cinzadeh from the Ukrainian parliament, Roderick Kieswetter from the Bundestag in Germany, and then Renas Poznaks from the European Parliament, but also from Latvia. And I think we'll try to mix it up a little bit and make it interesting. In the introduction, the introductory note that accompanies the program, it starts by saying Ukraine is not just defending its own sovereignty, it is reshaping the security architecture of Europe. And its resilience has demonstrated that European security is deeply interconnected with Ukraine's fate. All right, that's one statement. But, I went to the working group on Ukraine yesterday on European fatigue, and all I was hearing was that Europeans are not interested. They know there's a war, but they don't think it's their war, and they don't want to sacrifice. Some of you who were at the opening last night heard the chairwoman, Ivana Stefkova, say that people should not take freedom for granted, something that has to be fought for, but, what I was hearing was in Europe, a lot of people are taking freedom for granted, and they're letting Ukraine do their fighting and save them. They're letting Ukraine save them. And I think, frankly, that that's pretty dangerous. The fellow by the name of Walter Russell Mead, who gave the keynote at last year's conference, wrote in the Wall Street Journal recently in a column that voters everywhere remain unwilling to support vigorous defense and foreign policies that offer hope of avoiding a global conflict, which he feels is coming, and that the upholders of the existing world order lack the conviction and clarity of vision required to defend it. That's pretty serious stuff. So I want to start by asking the foreign minister, and we're so happy you're with us, Mr. Minister, if you would talk about this and what you think about this problem, and whether how critical this problem is, and is Europe becoming a little bit more alert to its own security problems with the backtracking of the United States? The United States just is no longer definitely going to be there for Europe. So is Europe waking up?
So first of all, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for organizing another round of Forum 2000, this special place for us to meet, greet together, and discuss ideas. So speaking of European security and how it can be achieved, this is quite simple discussion in a sense that we know what needs to be achieved, but how to achieve it. That's when it becomes really difficult. And we know that Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, but not only against Ukraine, against Europe as such, is now taking place in fourth year of full scale, and it can be traced back to less tangible, but still attacks against us. And still, there is an ongoing discussion in our societies questioning the substance of that, maybe looking forward to some future relationship with Russia, which really it's not now the time for that. And the question is how to build up such a solid barrier against Russia that Russia will realize that they have to stop with the aggression, that the Putin will realize that he has to stop with that aggression. And of course, Ukraine is like the most important piece of that wall, but then you have another components. You have Baltics, you have Finland, you have all the areas, maybe not even physical ones. You have areas in a cyberspace, in information domain, and all those things take up quite a lot of resources. And then it comes to the discussion: who is willing to pay? If we are willing to pay for our own defense, and that's what then makes this really complicated matter. On the United States, I see quite a shift in the way how Donald Trump speaks about Russian aggression against Ukraine, and I would say in a positive way. Maybe it's not what we would like to be hearing here in Europe, but he basically forced Europe to increase the military expenditure, which is very good news. And for example, he is now ready to send weapons, sell weapons to Ukraine, but without all those limitations, which there were previous. And that's a big change. It's a very, very, very important shift in the way how they think in White House. So Europe has to get its act together. We know that for a long time. In many countries, difficult domestic situation. We are in a post-election period here in Czechia. Also, not easy times. But naturally, Europe is at the end of the day able to unite in its own defense. So we have to do everything to achieve that unity.
Okay, well, I'm going to skip over Ivana. I want her to back cleanup here, and I want her to then to respond to everybody. I just want to respond to one thing you said when you talked about a future relationship with Russia. What is Russia? And I would argue, and I'll just sort of throw this out there, that, Putin doesn't necessarily, he represents great Russian chauvinism, greater Russia. And the only way you can have a real relationship with Russia, a real relationship, is if, you have a more normal country, not an expansionist country committing war crimes. And that's going to require Ukraine's victory in the war, and then maybe with Ukraine's victory in the war, you have a chance for a different Russia. I don't know if anybody agrees with me, but Roderick, why don't you respond to that?
Well, we in Germany have a quite difficult approach to Russia, and we don't see Russia as Putin's Russia. It's an imperial country.
That's what I mean.
And it's a colonial country as well. And due to the fact that they cannot offer anything to their population except of war, no perspective economically, without introducing the minorities and so on, they can only survive with perspectives outside the country. Resources in Africa, with the Africa Corps, former Wagner Corps, and now with war. And who knows Putin? He has had in 2001 a great speech in our parliament. But as we know today, he was advised by some Russian-aligned politicians, and he asked them, in Germany, he asked them, what do you want to hear? And so his speech was that what some of us wanted to hear. And in 2007, when he was at the Munich Security Conference, I could see on his notes from above, and nearly every page was handwritten or was overwritten by hand. So Lavrov later on said it was his own speech. Yes, it is his own speech, but they have supported him. And then in 2008 and 2014, my country and France have hampered with a veto the progress for Ukraine and Georgia to become a member of NATO, Membership Action Plan. And in 2014, we didn't manage a double approach, diplomacy and strength. So we only invested in diplomacy instead of arming Ukraine. So this is a very difficult behavior from our side, but Russia has exploited this in the past with cognitive warfare. And so a third of our population is believing that Russia is strong, that we can do anything against it, and they are voting two parties. One is built by Russia, BSW, Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, and the other one is the AfD, which is completely hollowed out by Russian expertise, I would like to say. So to make it short, the big difference of Germany and Russia is, or until 1945, Germany and Russia didn't accept the right of existence of the neighbor states, Soviet Union at that time. Only due to unconditional surrender, we accepted, finally, and for God's sake, and for the help of our allies today, we accepted the right of existence of our neighbor states. But still people believe that Russia is strong and that they could give up European Union, NATO, and cooperate with Russia with German technology and Russian resources. And this is influenced by Russia. And therefore, we have to contain those forces in Germany, which are also part of Nord Stream 2, which are part of G8, and all those who believe to have open doors to Russia. We should close the doors. It's not changed by trade or changed by rapprochement. It must be changed by distance. We have to keep Russia away so that they are not hollowing out us, and that the shadow market is dried out, that they cannot purchase semiconductors and other high-tech values from the shelf.
What's the relationship of the war to keeping Russia away? I mean, you've said before that Ukraine is Europe's first line of defense. Is it?
Yes, it is, but it must be included in the EU and NATO. For the first step, it's a coalition of the willing, right? But they must have a perspective in the EU and NATO. Because just look to Poland 3 weeks ago, where the 50 drones flew from Ukraine, 52 drones. And Ukraine took out 32 of them, and 19 flew to Poland. And we were only able to shoot down 4. So it was Ukraine who helped us to minimize this number. So include them, create a no-fly zone, create, with a coalition of the willing, create an air defense so that the Ukrainian forces have the chance to bring their air defense forces from the west to the east and to the south and to the northeast, because otherwise we will lose. And if we don't bring in Ukraine in our own defense, then Europe will not consist of that what it is, a pillar of peace, freedom, and self-determination. And therefore, Ukraine belongs to this Europe, is part of it. And to say this to the public, we need to do this even more than in the past and give up all this Russian romanticism we experience in Germany and west of Germany.
All right. Well, I mean, it's, the question is, if so much depends upon the outcome of this war, and the question is, what can we do to help Ukraine win? Reines. He, by the way, is a crackerjack member of the European Parliament, and he wrote me some of the things he's doing, and he's really at the cutting edge. Go ahead.
From one perspective, it's a quite simple question, what we need to do to defeat Russia, but I just want to add that I think that's also easiest and fastest way how to contain all pro-Russian politicians and parties in Europe is to defeat Russia. Then they will lose their feeding and will be gone. But basically, from Parliament's perspective, if Parliament had full power, I think Ukraine could have anything already 2 years ago. But unfortunately, Parliament is more like of influencer, I would say, and we can try to push things, but and you know, being annoying to decision makers to do more. But and from Parliament and political perspective, Ukraine is already fully integrated, at least in the future of Europe defense, because in any strategic paper, what comes out from Parliament, Ukraine is included as a part of a Europe defense. Because of course we realize and all understand that no one has such an experience and knowledge as Ukrainians now. And yes, so, but the issue with Europe is also that one thing is what we want to do or give Ukraine. The other thing is what we are able to do and give, because as we all know, defense and security in Europe and basically military industry was kind of toxic. You know, it's not a good thing to produce weapons. And it takes some time to to basically rebuild it. We need to rebuild it from, and also considering the new type of war. So we need to basically build a new military industry with the drones, counter-drones, with all the new things. And that's one of the reasons why, and we can see it, that Europe realized that we're not able to do as fast as possible to build this industry. So, but Ukrainians are. So what we can do to get everything faster is to invest in Ukraine's military industry, also with consideration that it will be the part of European military industry after the victory. But now it is as it is. Yes, Ukraine are able to do things much faster than Europe is, because we also talk about Europe, but still there is no one big Europe. There is 27 independent countries, and also when I hear that Europeans are not doing enough, I'm becoming a bit of angry, because I know that part of Europeans are doing everything they can, because of course the much further you are from a border, it's maybe less understanding of real risks, and also of course Europe has its own issues, and what is basically sometimes they try to create its kind of dilemma between our own social welfare and defense, which is actually a fake dilemma. We have in Europe, for example, Finland, which have both very strong military forces, strong army, industry, and also very good social welfare. So, yeah, that's basically one of the main reasons, and the only reason why I'm in the European Parliament. We have to do more and much faster, and I'm actually glad that Europe realized that Ukrainians can do it better and just switch the...
You're creating a bank, aren't you? You're creating a bank?
Yeah, but not me, but that's one of idea, because as I said, military industry, it's toxic. It's getting better now, but basically you cannot...
Hard to get loans.
Because the future, especially in this modern, all technology is basically the dual use is the key, because you need to get the civil industry involved into military industry to increase capacity. Because when the huge amount of money comes into defense industry, but you have not enough capacity, you are not getting more weapons, you are getting more expensive weapons. And to increase capacity, the fastest way is to get civil industries involved in this. But they are not willing to do so, because when they start to get involved in the military industries, the banks are saying them, well, we are not working with military companies. And that's the big issue. It is getting better now, the things are changing, but still it takes time. And we need to solve this issue. Basically, we need to create new environment for military industry, which includes also financial solutions.
Okay. Ivana, you're the chair of the committee in the Ukrainian Parliament on integration into Europe. How are you doing, and what do you need to win the war?
Well, thank you very much for this question. First, I'm excited to be here again, and I'm grateful for this invitation. I think it's my 4th Forum 2000. Just as a first reaction, maybe, this is the panel that is difficult not to agree with, but we all know very well that we have a lot of people that we still have to convince how things really look like, and what is imaginary and what is real threat that we are actually facing together, and how do we deal with this threat. How do we do with regard to European integration? Not easy, not without, what is the diplomatic word? Not without hiccups. I think that's the right way to say it nicely in terms of our progress in transformation. But also not without the clear readiness of the EU to take care of some of the things that are not necessarily possible to be discussed and decided between Ukraine and Orban government, for example. We do not progress with the opening of the first cluster. I think first and foremost because of the external reasons, because of the Hungarian, okay, it's not Hungarian veto, it's Orban's veto. But obviously, we would all benefit immensely if we would open it, because I think that that would give us a real serious additional attention on behalf of the European Union, national member states, that would help us to create additional safeguards against the backsliding with our reform agenda. Because there is a temptation to blame Europe on this. So we don't want Europe to be blamed for not moving, Ukrainians not moving forward. But with regard to the war, and first and foremost, in order to be able to continuously transform, to have a vibrant societal life and continue on building and creating, definitely it is the security concern and security threat. And here the situation is pretty difficult. I think everybody is watching here in this audience what's happening, how the tactics of the Russian Federation has changed in terms of trying to break the will of the people in Ukraine if they cannot break through the front lines. And that is about attacks on the economy, attacks on the energy system in the beginning of the winter season. So already leaving people without water, electricity, heat. Hopefully, with your support, we will be able to manage to go through this winter. But let me also say a couple of words with regard to the title of our panel was about security architecture and the role of Ukraine in that. How do we see it? I think that Ukraine is definitely already today a guarantor of the European security. And not only guarantor of the European security, but also a very, as Jan has mentioned, a very serious part and player in the European defense. And however, at the same time, you know, we are all considering in Europe, in European capitals, we are considering that we are supporting Ukraine, that everybody is supporting Ukraine, and this is incredible. For the first time in our history, we are not alone. We are very grateful for that support. But I think we have to move to another narrative and another comprehension and understanding that it is not about common support, but it is about common defense. And that would actually change the whole type of thinking, where we would look into what is a role as of today for Ukraine in European defense, common defense, and what will be the perspectives for Ukraine further. Because we hear so many politicians are saying, well, Ukraine is at the front line of the European defense. Ukraine is fighting our war. It's not only Ukraine's war, it's our war, and so on and so on. But at the same time, all of this and the will to support Ukraine, or the readiness to support Ukraine, really depends on the goodwill in this or that country, on the political impact or non-impact of different forces, including the Russians, inside your societies to break you up from within. And then we are having elections that are not necessarily really addressing the concerns of the people, but are playing on the fears and turning the will of the country into a different direction with regard to support to Ukraine. And I think that means that when we are seeing what de facto is the situation today and the role of Ukraine in the European defense, we have to also think of how the euro, we have to translate this in something that will not be dependent on changes, on these political winds, on the mood swings, and so on. And that means really defining the legal grounds. And right now, already thinking, how do we go about Ukraine, including Ukraine, integrating Ukraine into European and transatlantic defense and security system, on the top of something that has to be done, which is retaining the urgency of the momentum and understanding that the time is really ticking, and we have to ensure that the urgency of this momentum is felt across Europe in order to preserve the way of life that you've enjoyed over decades.
Are you talking about an architecture, a defense architecture? What are you talking about?
Yes, I am talking about defense architecture, but I'm also talking about two things. First, recognizing de facto that Ukraine is a major contributor to European defense. On the basis of that, still has to be built. On the basis of that, going into legal commitments. How do we ensure that this is continued, that this is not seen as a charity, not seen as an act of humanitarian support or whatever, but this is seen as a necessity and interest for Europe? That's one thing. And secondly, or rather I would have to put it first, we would have to recognize that right now is the time to invest as much as possible in different means in Ukrainian capacity to stop the Russian Federation and its, I don't want to say allies, I don't know, its colleagues, whatever, axis of evil, basically, stop on our territory and not allowing this war to to continue further with much more aggressive actions beyond those that are already happening to European continent. And that means weapons, weapons, and weapons to Ukraine, and that means pressure and pressure and pressure on the Russian Federation.
Mr. Minister, I mean, how is the Czech government and Parliament going to respond now to the change in the Czech government? Is it going to affect, has the Czech foreign policy been affected in any way by your election?
So there will be change, that's clear. That was the election ticket of the biggest party which was able to win that, and the leader Babiš already said that he will be starting cutting different kind of support for Ukraine, especially those one which goes directly from the state budget. The Parliament will have a first session on the 3rd of November, so it will take some time to form a new government. We are now in the middle of that. You can read it every day in the news. So I don't want to make prediction for the new government and the new Parliament, but I can speak for the party I represent and what I have been running with and what I have been doing for the last 4 years. So we will support all those activities and we will push on the new government to continue with that. And it's not only good for Ukraine, it's good for the whole Europe, for our security. It's necessary for the people who fled here, for the refugees. And also it's good for our country to be part of those countries who understand what does it mean to stop Putin. So this will be our policy, and for sure we will continue with that. I hope that everything, it's not possible to be undone immediately, but with some political will, a lot of back steps can take place. And what seems to be most endangered is a munition initiative, which was very successful and would not be possible to be done without political support. Last year, Czechia delivered 1.5 million ammunition rounds to Ukraine, with most of them donations from the other countries like Germany. Thank you very much for that. Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, and many others, up to 20. This year we already delivered 1.1 million rounds, and deliveries are now continuing, and maybe it will be even more at the end of this year than was last year, but I cannot tell the final number yet. So if this is discontinued, then we are basically creating a problem for ourselves. And we could see more of such examples, because currently everything is happening in such a fast pace. Take a coalition of the willing. It's thing which started after the Oval Office 6 months ago, 7 months ago. We were invited because Czechia was doing, thanks to Petr Fiala and our government, important decisions, investments into our security, into Ukraine's security. Will Babiš, with his approach, will be welcomed member such a club? I'm not so sure. He will be speaking to people like Orbán. So that's making me to think that changes will be there. But also we have quite a resilient society and opposition. So let's see how we will be successful.
And you have the advantage that you're further to the east. In other words, you're closer to the danger, which I mean, but that still doesn't affect everybody. I mean, presumably there are people in the Czech Republic here who are a little bit complacent.
So there is a split in the society on this matter. Now the parties which are, let's say, reluctant to direct support to Ukraine won in elections, and they have a majority with a possibility to form a government.
Yeah, the president talked about that this morning.
Yeah.
He said some of the partners might be a little bit soft. I think he used that word.
But you know, that's very polite, how to say it. So one of the parties, they would like to leave the EU and NATO, and the anti-Ukrainian ticket, it's, you know, present over basically every speech they have, very falsely. But we were not able to, I think we were convincing in explaining it. The question is if this was the major decision factor of those elections. I would not say so. So here we are.
Do you see Forum 2000 being a kind of a Czech soft power?
Definitely it is.
Definitely?
But I would rather say to the communities outside of Czechia, in a sense, all the groups and people in opposition figures you can meet here.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Roderick, there's a big issue which never gets discussed. I don't know why, but isn't there still like 330 billion euros of Russian central bank money in German and Belgian banks? When is that money going to be given to Ukraine so that they can just buy weapons with it?
It's 240 billion euros.
It's 240 now?
240 plus other assets, you are more than 300. But in Europe, there are about 240 billion euros. Most of them is in Belgium. Some of them is in Frankfurt. But it is in Europe. And there are different schools of thinking. I'm very clear this money must be made available for Ukraine. But the voices against this say, well, this could damage the European financial market in comparison with other financial areas in the world. Very clear to say, when we froze the assets, this was the time where others could wake up, but not when we used this money because it was abused and misused by Russian oligarchs. So the idea now is to take 140 billion out of that.
140.
140 out of that, take 80 to 90 as a reserve, as a guarantee, which stays with the bank, and take this 140 and give this in addition to the normal assistance to Ukraine for weapon procurement. So this is the theory. This needs unanimous vote, including Slovak Republic and Hungary. And this will be prolonged every 6 months. So even if we do this, we have the danger that every 6 months, this might be under pressure from the societies of some European member states. However, the idea is that this is in addition and not as a replacement for European investment for Ukraine armaments procurement. So this would mean in the next 2 years, so only 4 times 6 months, where we have to prolong this. I believe this is feasible. However, it's a sense of urgency. And within the next 2 years, I believe this will be very decisive, because within the next 2 years, we expect a further escalation, military escalation of Russia. what is behind that. The European countries will be ready by 29, perhaps by 28, to be resilient enough regarding the armaments industry, regarding the structure of defense. But Russia will not wait until there is 29 and Putin goes public and says we can't escalate anymore. The Europeans have prepared. So I plea that we all are awake enough that Russia will escalate within the next 2 years where we will not be ready. Therefore, the idea to use this 140 billion euros to fully fledge and invest in Ukrainian armaments industry. And that Ukraine is a pillar of our security we saw in Copenhagen a week ago because their experts prevented us from further drone flights from Russia. So they are already included. We need to do this formally. And I have a plea to all of you regarding this additional money. We need to press our governments, not the parliaments, the governments, that this is seen as additional money. Why? There are some voices in Europe who think that then they could shrink their investment and use this money as a replacement. And therefore, we need one voice and one decision about that, that nobody is trying to sneak out.
Are there any governments that have gone along with that view?
Well, I have mentioned this on purpose.
Yeah.
And just to give you some figures, there are some countries in Europe who are investing nearly 2% of their GDP for the military assistance of Ukraine. Denmark, 2%, the Baltic states, Poland, nearly 2%. Czech Republic, I would like to applaud you for your ammunition endeavor. But you also invest more. Even the United Kingdom is investing 0.3% of the GDP. My country is investing in real figures most. However, it's only 0.1% of our GDP. So if we quadrupled to 0.4%, it would be ease the budget situations of many neighbor states, of many European states who are investing much more. And therefore, we should increase our own German investment. Discussions are ongoing, and see this 140 billion euro acquis and treasure as an additional support within the next 2 years. And we know that there is a budget deficit in Ukraine, independent from the military one, of 60 billion euros. So if we invest this in military equipment, in weapons, this could bring a turnaround, and this would also make clear to our public that Ukraine is protecting us and is not a tool of us, that Ukraine is part of us, and we are not waiting and looking what Ukraine might do or not. And this is also very important as a signal to Russia. You cannot contain us, you cannot confront us with further escalations. We do what is needed, and we need to invest all in this context for Ukraine.
And what is the prospect for this happening, do you think?
Please, once again.
What is the prospect of this happening?
Well, this will be done by the end of this year, by the European Council, probably in November. And then it could be handed over starting in January. This is the idea behind.
Okay, it's imminent.
And we need to do this, if I may say that. You are very positive, Mr. Minister, regarding the US administration. Well, there is still no single Tomahawk, no single JASSM, no single additional ATACMS. There is a lot of announcement, but no delivery. So it is us Europeans, it's up to us. We should not wait. It's a European task, it's a European mission, and it is also a signal from us Europeans, not only to Ukraine, it's a signal to Putin, you cannot threaten us, and it's a signal to Trump, we will not wait any longer for you. We have wasted 8-9 months now waiting for the US. 8-9 months where thousands of people were killed on the Ukrainian side or heavily injured because we waited. And it doesn't help to wait, so we need to not only invest this money, but also to scale up our armaments industry immediately.
Well, that's great. Very good, very good, very good. What do you tell us your view on these issues, what has to be done, what if you think the money can be made available for Ukraine, and then also you have a lot of other initiatives. I mean, what you wrote me about your drones and all the way you're amplifying the voice of the Eastern Front line states.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting what you're trying to do within the European Parliament.
I'm trying to. I don't know how. I think that we don't have to stop Russia. We have to defeat Russia. Basically, otherwise we will just pass this problem to our children because they will come back. Because I was born in Soviet Union, so and first 13 years lived in Soviet Union. So and when Soviet Union collapsed, basically 14 republics were some of them are very happy, some of them more or less that they become independent, they get the independence back. But the one republic felt that they lost half of Russia. Because it never was a union for them, it was like a communist version of Russian Empire.
Does he want to get it back?
Of course, they are not even hiding it. So, and that's one of the issues actually. How we look at this war, because there is a lot of countries and politicians who think that it's just war between Ukraine and Russia just need to give them those couple regions. What the issue? But it's not. Ukraine is just the first step to rebuild what they think is empire. But and the other issue with Russians, the people, is that and why maybe it's difficult like to make their life worse with a sanction. Like when we talk about the simple people, they lived very bad always, but now they are proud. Because because all the world has fear from us. So and the fear is the only form of respect they know. And that's big this and that's why maybe there is also support in society, because we live in bad conditions, but we are great. Everybody's afraid of
Ukraine
us.
Doesn't seem to be very intimidated.
No. Yeah, but actually there's one important thing what I think at one point we'll have to start to talk about it, about Ukraine's accession into European Union. Because of course when it's political announcements, it's like, yes, move as fast as we can. But when you come to the practical decisions and solutions, there is quite a big issue, which all know, especially, and it's a European thing. But we're not talking about it. Ukraine's accession into EU is not possible without big reforms in EU. Technically, like existing system cannot manage it. So we need.
Why?
Because when you take the system as it is, for example, I don't know, subsidies for agriculture. So basically, if we take Ukraine in, all the money goes to Ukraine, which of course no one, and it's basically technical issue, but you need to do quite a big reforms into EU itself, and especially when you talk for as you know, the most loud and powerful part of society in Europe is farmers, and they know all that, they follow that, and politicians are afraid of them also, they're listening to them. And when you ask, I was in a couple of meetings, when you ask them, they said, no, we are against Ukrainian secession. Why? Because then they will take all money. But when you start to talk but if we change and it will be equal, be fine, we need to do some reforms. Oh, then okay. Because, and that is the issue of European politicians, not to talk about it. And then at the end, you get answer from society that no, we don't want Ukraine. And that we have to start to fix as fast as possible, otherwise there will be big issues with that.
Okay. Ivana, from the very beginning, even before February 24th, 2022, but Ukraine has surprised people. I mean, shocked people, shocked them. They thought, Ukraine would be conquered 3 days or a week, but certainly not much more than a week. And look what's happened. Can you explain Ukraine? In other words, what is it about the Ukraine people? Is it their history of knowing Russia and having suffered under Russia historically that has made them somehow especially tough?
Well, thank you for these kind words. May I just react to,
please, go ahead.
Something that colleagues have mentioned with regard to the European Union reform that is needed? Irrespectively of the fact whether Ukrainians are joining the EU or not, you need to reform your agriculture, because if you want to be compatible, if you want to really have the future in that sector in the world and have an impact in the world. So that does not come because of Ukrainians being willing to join, and that is another myth that will have to be debunked. And I totally understand that there are many of the decision-making procedures that have to be addressed, and a lot of things have to be fixed, or I don't know, at least fine-tuned in the EU before enlargement. But I think all of us candidate countries, is not only exclusively for Ukraine, but the Western Balkans and so on, we don't want to become hostage to the non-finished, excuse of the non-finished internal reform in the EU. So that means that this has to be addressed already now, and better even reflected already in the next MFF. And then this is about like real serious things. So here we need a speed again. And one more thing, I really wanted to thank colleagues for saying that Russia has to be defeated. If we don't, all this formula of we cannot allow Ukraine to lose, and we cannot allow Russia to win, or we will be with Ukraine as long as it takes, without really defining what exactly it takes, we are not moving anywhere. We have to understand that in order to maybe have a chance to get to normality, Russia has to experience strategic defeat. I'm not suggesting that we Ukrainians will march through our international recognized borders with military force, but there are ways how altogether, through additional pressure, economic sanctions, really, closing the loopholes in all this sanctions circumvention, stopping, financing Russian military machine through buying Russian oil and Russian gas, and through LNG, and through Shadow Fleet. I mean, if you cut on those, you'll figure out that actually, you are paying 4 times more to Russian Federation for the energy right now as the EU, in comparison to what you've given to Ukraine over these years. That's uncomparable. This is scary if you think in those terms. These things do require very honest and very open conversation. And with regard explaining Ukraine, I fully believe that we Ukrainians knew when we were given this 3 days, and I remember there were articles somewhere in the American press maybe a month before the full-scale invasion, and the analysis was, how does US have to prepare to assist Ukrainians in their guerrilla movement? And I was like, well, we will hold still. We hope that we are not immediately moving into guerrilla movement vis-a-vis Russians, but that was our feeling, but not the American feeling. So we kind of knew that we will fight back, but I think the major component of that readiness and resilience is the horizontal type of the building of our society. We are not a vertical and layered society. We are very much about networks, totally unexpected networks which are working on the trust. And that's exactly what saved us in those, especially in those first days before the, the military equipment and assistance was coming in from our partners that understood, okay, Ukraine is holding. It is exclusively about this ability to trust, even though if you don't know the person, but if you know what's the cause, what you're willing to do, all those volunteer chains that have immediately somehow were created immediately without functioning before, people being ready to help the armed forces where they were capable, or to help other people and so on. So I think the major answer is the horizontal type of building of our society, and I think that has to be studied. I really believe so. I really believe that it's not every single society, not each society is that way.
I mean, that sounds like a great thesis. I mean, is it being studied?
May I add one thing to this about what I'm saying all the time in European Parliament when we talk about enlargement, because of course we see what happens with Hungary or other countries, the switching of the mood, but what makes Ukraine different, that it's the only country, who voted for way to European Union, not with a paper ballot, but with their lives. Because as we remember, the full name was Euromaidan, and they're still paying with that. So we just cannot let it down. And I am, to be honest, a bit scared that because at one point maybe Ukrainians will say, listen, we don't need you, bye. If we will not move fast enough.
Well, okay.
There definitely will be those people who will want to play the card, oh, see, you are not wanted in the EU, they are not so fast, they are not so quick, or in the EU or NATO, so let's move around and have our third way. And that's another type of things that is, that I think what we are seeing right now in Georgia, for example, and actually through this kind of our own way going to the direction under Russian Federation, and that's another scary scenario. We don't want it to happen to anyone.
Yeah.
To us,
there's an issue. I sort of maybe mentioned it marginally when at the beginning, but if Ukraine wins.
Yeah, when?
When Ukraine, okay. Look, I don't regard anything as certain, but yes, okay. When Ukraine wins,
as soon as
the consequences for Russia. I just like to think about that because it's my humble view that it'll be very difficult to. Putinism does not represent Russia. There is another Russia. Although a lot of it has left the country and, it's shattered, a lot of it's in prison and what have you. But there is another Russia, and that other Russia can possibly, I'd just be interested in your view, Mr. Minister. You're part of a country that suffered under Russian imperialism, which was called the Soviet Union and communism. Is it possible that if Russia loses the war, that it could become a more normal country? This is certainly something that Navalny always wanted, and he sort of represented a Russian who, he was sort of mainstream, in terms of Russian identity. He wasn't, a kind of just a dissident, a little bit nationalistic and so forth, but not imperialistic. There's nothing wrong with being patriotic and, but in any event, I'd like you to know your view. Is it possible that we can, when Ukraine wins the war, that we're going to have a possibility of a more normal Russia?
So, first of all, I believe that Ukraine will win the war.
All right, that's settled.
And every scenario, when thinking about European security, our democracy's values and things like that, should be built in a way that we really don't care what will happen in Russia. So I would not bet that Russia will change profoundly. We have to build up our defense, Ukraine must win and protect its territory. And we have to send a strong signal, Russia, do not even think about Europe. This will not gonna happen. Of course, it's in our interest to support democratic voices and democratic society in Russia and Russian exile. Because I believe that every society, at the end of the day, thrives towards those human basic values of freedom of speech, independent journalism, good institutions you can trust, and things like that. And Russian society is not different from that one. They live now in a totality, in a Putinism totality, but we should believe that they can change. But we should not bet that because that will happen in Russia, we can count it somehow into our calculations. No. And the other ways, the harsher we will be in a sense of readiness of our defense and in support of Ukraine, the sooner this Putin myth of expansion, this Putinism will disappear. And we know what happens to Russian Tsars when the clocks on the historic clocks turns. So, but we cannot count on that. It might take quite a lot of time. So I believe the Russia and the Russian society may change. We should strive for that, but definitely until that we need to get ready, support Ukraine, build up our wall, things like that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let me disagree with you, Minister. I'm sorry. I have a hard time believing in the change of the Russian society and Russian population. Your 30-plus years, common European 30-plus years, attempt to work with Russia and democratize it through the trade relations and through exposure to democratic values, freedoms, and so on, did not produce a different society. I do belong to those people who were still born in the Soviet Union, and I do remember in the elementary school when we were taught to write letters to Reagan with requests not to bomb us because we are very good. And we were taught that it's okay to give up on, all the basic things like good toys, travel, some food, whatever, good clothes, because the country needed to be strong and the country needed weapons to be protected from those damn Americans, imperialists that want to attack us. That has not changed in the Russian Federation. We have cut that umbilical cord. But that rhetoric has been there, maybe with a short period of Yeltsin, which was immune to that. That's it. And so when you are, for hundreds of years, basically explaining people this imperialistic approach, they believe in that imperialistic approach. Well, and when I'm hearing that, that this is right now fashionable, I am attending many international events, and it's so fashionable to promote democratic, quote and unquote, Russian democratic voices. So I'm wondering if Russian, diaspora, which left the country, which fled because they are anti-regime, that does not mean that they are necessarily anti-imperialistic.
No, I know, but look.
And so we have to make sure that we are not deceived by the very fact that they are anti-Putin, that they are less imperialistic than Putin is. I deliberately listened to some of these speakers on some of the conferences, and I just see how this is the very same narrative that Kremlin is pushing across European capitals, but just from the other perspective. So I really want us to be much more careful, make the lessons learned exercise, and understand Russia has the only chance to normality if it does suffer a strategic defeat. And if it does not suffer strategic defeat, then we don't have a chance to see more normalized Russia, civilized Russia, with whom we can continue working or find the way how to work efficiently and constructively and so on.
Let's get a German point of view.
If I may say a word, we are not in a disagreement at all.
Sorry.
Because I fully agree with you. And I think it basically just clicks into that. One thing that we should strive for something is not that we will be naive in a ways of trading like that. I just didn't want to, stop believing in a human soul as such. And I think you hinted a way how to achieve that. Yeah.
Well, look, Forum 2000 has honored Vladimir Kara-Murza, who has his own vision for a different Russia. And I just don't think our community can give up that hope. I just don't think we can give up that hope. Maybe it's a long-term process and it's step by step, but I just don't think we can give up that hope.
Maybe not in those geographical borders. Then Russia also has another chance for being normal.
Why don't we get a German perspective on this?
I'm really grateful to the statement of the minister and of Ivana, why we have to get the right priorities. And I believe we are deviating from the purpose of our support of Ukraine to win and Russia to be defeated, if we now talk about the future of Russia. I believe we first of all have to think about if Ukraine failed, what that might cause. It might cause nuclear proliferation, because no single treaty for nuclear disarmament is valid any longer due to 1994 and the consequences. Second, we should think about Russia in the first way. We should think about if the war has ended successfully for Ukraine. What does this mean for more than 1 million of soldiers, male and female, to be reintegrated in their families? We should work on that Ukraine is a flourishing country with perspectives, with huge economic perspectives, that people who came back from the front line and meeting with hundreds of Ukrainians coming back from Western countries, that there is no internal confrontation. But there is a mutual understanding of recreating a renaissance for Ukraine. And Russia has to pay for it. And when we think on Russia, there is a very harmful thinking in some European countries to need some backdoors to Russia if Ukraine might fail, or we need to find the good Russia. And I had a colleague who visited Ukraine, and he asked some young students for diplomacy in Kiev, and asked them, what do you want to become? We want to become ambassadors. Of which country? Of Ukraine. Why? This country will not exist in the future. Or the same person visited Yahidne, the cellar, the people who survived the cellar, and this person asked the survivors, well, there must have been some good Russians, or dozens were killed in this cellar. So I believe we have, some of us have the wrong priorities. First priority is Ukraine to win within the next 2 years, and Russia learn to lose, which means to accept the right of existence of all of its neighbor states, to pay reparations, to bring back the children who are abused, who are giving free for adoption, who are remilitarized, who have new names, new birth dates if they are very small. We really have to find the right basis for our debate, and I believe there are some who have a strong interest to deviate our debate to a more peaceful Russia or something like that. We could work for a peaceful Russia in the future, but not now. And the key is that Russia is split in this war. There are some who would closer align with China, and some in minority who would like to see the future in Europe. However, we should avoid all voices who say, well, we have to convince Russia in a fight against China. The sacrifice would not be China, the sacrifice would be Ukraine. So first things first, instead of thinking about a romantic future with Russia.
I'm always thinking. Okay, all right. Let's get the Baltic perspective.
Yeah, no. I also agree, but basically maybe there is some future for Russia if they will go like a full cycle of defeat. Because the issue with them is that they already once get away with it. After the World War II, they of course defeated Nazism, not alone actually, but what they did after with all the small nations of Soviet Union, with Latvians, Estonians, Lithuanians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, all the deportations and basically genocide, they got away with it. And that's why, in their opinion, there is only one rule, international, unwritten, that works, that winner doesn't get judged. So, and if we let them away again with that, then we will be in I think, much bigger trouble. But for my opinion, the best solution would be if we have, I don't know, 28 small Russias. That would be perfect.
Small Russia. All right. Well, it may get smaller. Who knows what's going to happen?
Small Russia.
We have 10 minutes left, and
let them
we have
agree
time for a
among
couple of
themselves.
questions.
Yeah.
Make Russia small again.
We have
Real
time for maybe a
federation.
couple of questions.
Make
Please,
Russia
over here and then behind you. Can we get the mic here? Huh? You too. All right, let's do 3 in a row. Do we have a mic?
Thank you.
Oh my God, so many questions.
Lisa Yasko, Parliament of Ukraine. So I want to have a short comment and then a question. So my comment is about Russia. So I believe that the right way to frame is that we want the fall of Russian imperialism, which includes decolonization, which includes possible new geographic borders of Russia. But it must be very clear that those who will be in power in Russia shouldn't be imperialists. And that means so much, and I think it's very important to frame it in this exact way, because if these people still believe that, oh, you know, Russia is great within its borders, they don't care about democracy, they don't care about diversity, they don't care about the ethnic minorities. There is so much going on inside Russia that we don't know. We need to make sure that these stories come out and that might help the fall of the Russian Empire. My second thing I want to share is there was a question why we Ukrainians are fighting so much. And I just want to raise something that I find very beautiful and strong about what I feel in Ukraine, that our soil has seen so much struggle and so much resistance that it's in our genetics. We resist. We don't like powers. We don't really, as Ivana said, we are very horizontal. We take the initiative when we need to take. And that's very special because sometimes when there are orders coming on the top down, we don't obey. Because we believe what our heart and our soul is calling for, this is the right. And I just think that our soil is carrying this code, and this is very special. And my third...
All right, look, other people want to speak, and we only have 6 more minutes.
Yes, but my question, if I may. So, we are not talking about time. Like, when we are talking about when Ukraine wins, when we talk about all this rearmament and everything, are we waiting for some magic? Like, this is the question and the scream that I want to say. And if someone can answer that from our panel,
it's also a statement. It's also a good statement. Miroslava, and then over here, and then I think we're going to have to wrap it up. Please, and then we'll give everybody a quick minute to respond.
Thank you. Miroslava Gungadze, Atlantic Council. I really appreciate all your positions. My question is to our European colleagues. And strong position on Ukraine support. However, Ukraine is fighting for 3 years. The drones start flying to European airspace. We are still 3 years after talking about need to have a plan, need to have a solution, find a way how to finance. What would that take, finally, for you guys to get organized and actually understand that this is suicidal, not acting? Thank you.
Okay, that's a good thing to respond to. Over there, yeah.
Konstantin Egger, Deutsche Welle. I have a question to Rodrich Kiesewetter. Being an insider in Berlin, could you let us in the reasons why the Federal Chancellor promised Taurus missiles to Ukraine and then did not deliver? And one very short remark to our Latvian colleague. I think we should be very careful when we formulate, look at the Russian mentality in such a way that, oh, they're poor, but they like the empire. The problem is they're not poor. The GDP of Yekaterinburg, which is just a third city of Russia, is the 1/4 of the GDP of your own country, Latvia. So it is a very, very long shot and multidimensional struggle, where lots of things should not be simplified. It will last quite a long time. Thank you.
Okay, why don't we go to my left, one at a time, and everybody can have about a minute or minute and 10 seconds.
Well, I will be short. First of all, when you talk about Russia, it's always good to go outside Moscow too. But of course, when you look statistically, it's a huge country. Of course, it's hundreds of millions of people, 140 million. But there is a huge, basically also GDP is in a very small amount of people. So the other ones live as they live. But about the time, I totally agree and agree about waiting magic. But Europe is still, as I said, 27 countries, and it's always a fight between 27 countries every step. But still, I think objectively there is a progress. Of course, it's too slow. Not enough, but the progress is huge. But we have to understand that if you are reading books for 50 years and suddenly needs to fight, it takes some time to go to gym and build the muscles. But I cannot fully agree that Europe is still in the same place where it was 3 years ago. But fully agree that it's still not enough and still too slow.
Okay, Roderick.
Yeah. To Ellie, we are not waiting for magic. We don't have the time. We have to confront the people with the truth. People bear much more than some politicians. This leads me to the question of this suicidal acting of you. Well, Germany needs a 9/11 to wake up, to leave our complacency. Nevertheless, we are doing a lot regarding the refugees in Germany. We are investing 4 times more for the Ukrainian refugees in Germany than for military aid for Ukraine. 4 times more. I wished we would reverse that, acknowledge the degrees of the Ukrainian refugees in Germany, bring them to work, and then take the money and invest this into Ukraine. This is a question of mindset and political will, and yes. And the last question, it is about Taurus. Why not? 2 clear, very sober answers. First of all, fear of democratic elections in Eastern Germany, and second, fear of Putin, fear for further escalation. And the Chancellor himself said, in contradiction to that, what he said in the election campaign, that he is continuing the foreign policy of the Scholz government. And this means no Taurus, no ground troops, and no further weapons and ammunition except for air defense. And this is something which is really a disappointment also in his own party. And now we are 3% less in the opinion polls than the AfD, which would like to cooperate with Russia. So therefore, I repeat, confront the people with the truth, and as a politician, male, female, diverse, go ahead.
Well, I didn't get the question, so I just maybe to sum up and ask our European colleagues, disregarding every single alarm bell that is ringing already in your countries is every single day of disregarding of those drones, fighter jets that are coming in, drones that are blocking your airports and so on. Every single day of that disregard brings bigger problems to you in the future. So this is a salami tactics that Russia is right now using, trying to exploit and test where are your red lines. And it will become more and more aggressive. Don't wait for it to become more aggressive. Help us to cure with aggressive medicine, with weapons, with pressure, with strength, to cure that cancer still when we are holding the ground on the territory of Ukraine, because you cannot treat aggressive type of cancer with some homeopathic medicine, and that's exactly sometimes some people do want to do. So hope that already enough alarm bells have been rang, and that we all together can get into action and define our common security architecture with clear space and place for Ukraine and perspective also for Ukraine in our common action.
Thank you. And Mr. Minister, you have the last word.
So we need to continue with increasing defense expenditures, because this is investment in our security. Part of them, of course, needs to go to Ukraine, so we can successfully defend Ukraine and defend Europe. And we need to stick to protection of our basic values, because this is what we are fighting for. Thank you very much.
And I think, let me just say, in conclusion, I just want to say the consensus here is that Ukraine will win. Good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.